Alright, so I never thought I'd be one of those people writing about my life on the internet, but here we are. I need to get this out of my system. Maybe it'll help someone else who's standing where I was, staring at their phone, wondering if they should even bother confronting the truth. So, let's start from the beginning. My wife and I had been together for 9 years, married for 6. We were one of those couples everyone assumed would make it. We had inside jokes, mutual friends, and a cat that only liked us, which felt like some kind of cosmic blessing. But you know how, when a glass has a hairline crack, it still holds water, until one day, it just doesn't? That was us. There was no huge blowout, no dramatic cheating scandal, at least, not yet. It was just small things at first. The way she laughed a little too hard at her co-workers' jokes. The way she started locking her phone, when she never had before. The way she stopped seeing me, even when I was right there. It sounds petty, right? Like, who cares if someone starts texting more? Who cares if they go to work drinks a little too often? I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself she'd never do something like that. I was wrong. And the moment I found out, it felt like my stomach had been ripped out and replaced with a block of ice. So, here's where things really started to shift. I ignored the weird feelings for months because, honestly, the idea of confronting my wife about something as vague as a bad vibe felt ridiculous. Like, what was I supposed to say? Hey, I've noticed you smiling at your phone more. Are you cheating on me? But then, there were things I couldn't ignore. One night, she was in the shower, and her phone lit up next to me. It wasn't locked, she must have forgotten. I didn't even mean to look, but when I saw a message preview from someone named Elliot, my gut clenched. Can't stop thinking about last night. That was it. Just 7 words, but they hit like a truck. My brain immediately went into overdrive. Who the hell is Elliot? She never mentioned an Elliot. Last night? She told me she was working late. I stared at the phone, my hands actually shaking. I had 2 choices, check more or put it down and pretend I never saw it. And I wish I could say I took the high road, but I didn't. I tapped the message. And what I saw. That was the moment my marriage ended, even if I didn't realize it yet. I don't even remember deciding to open the messages. It was like my body just moved on its own, like some awful survival instinct kicking in. And what I found? It was worse than I could have imagined. There were weeks, maybe months, of messages between her and Elliot. Inside jokes I didn't get. Late-night conversations while I was asleep in the next room. And then there were the ones that made my stomach churn. God, I wish I was waking up next to you instead. You make me feel alive again. And the worst one. I love you. I actually laughed when I saw that one. A weird, choked-out laugh, because it was so absurd. My wife was in love with someone else. And I had no idea? I was still staring at the screen when I heard the shower turn off. The panic hit me like a truck. I barely had time to put the phone back exactly where I found it before she walked into the bedroom, toweling her hair like nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and all I could think was, who the hell are you? But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I had no plan, no proof beyond what I'd just seen. So instead, I swallowed it down, forced a smile, and said, "Hey, you want to order Thai tonight?" She smiled back, totally unaware. Yeah, that sounds good. And just like that, I became an actor in my own life. You ever try to act normal when your whole world is falling apart? It's like trying to walk with a broken leg and pretending you're fine. Every step hurts, but you keep moving because stopping means admitting you're in agony. For the next few days, I didn't confront her. I told myself I needed a plan. I needed to think. But really, I was just scared. Scared of what would happen if I said it out loud. Scared that once the words left my mouth, there'd be no taking them back. So instead, I watched. And once I started watching, I couldn't unsee it. The way she smiled at her phone. The way she suddenly had a girls' night every Friday when she never used to. The way she rolled away from me in bed, like my touch was something inconvenient. I started feeling like a stranger in my own home. Like I was intruding on someone else's life. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. and reached over for her, only to find her side of the bed empty. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of voices. I got up and followed the sound, my heart hammering. There she was, sitting on the couch, phone to her ear, voice soft. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I didn't need to. I didn't say anything. Just turned around and went back to bed. Because in that moment, I knew, I wasn't her husband anymore. Not really. I don't know what finally pushed me over the edge. Maybe it was the way she kissed me goodbye one morning without really seeing me. Or maybe it was the fact that I was starting to feel like a ghost in my own house, haunting the life we used to have. Either way, I snapped. It was a Saturday. She was getting ready for another girls' night, putting on makeup in the mirror like she actually cared, like she was getting ready for someone who wasn't me. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. So, how's Elliot? The brush froze in her hand. For a second, she didn't move, didn't even breathe. Then, slowly, she put it down and met my eyes in the mirror. What? You heard me. My voice came out steady, but inside, I was unraveling. How long has this been going on? She turned around then, her face a mix of shock and something else, something like relief. That pissed me off more than anything. Are you seriously not even gonna deny it? I asked, my voice rising. She sighed, rubbing her temples. I didn't want you to find out like this. I laughed, an ugly, humorless sound. Oh? How did you want me to find out? Maybe when you finally got bored of sneaking around and decided to replace me officially? She didn't say anything. And that silence? It told me everything I needed to know. I felt something inside me snap. You know what? Forget it. Just go. Go have your girls' night. She hesitated, like she was about to say something. But then, she grabbed her purse and left. Just like that. And I was alone. The second the door shut behind her, I just stood there. I thought confronting her would give me some kind of satisfaction, some sense of control. But all I felt was hollow. I looked around our apartment, our home, and everything felt wrong. Her coffee mug on the counter. Her shoes by the door. The stupid scented candle she always lit at night. It was like standing in the ruins of something that hadn't realized it was dead yet. I grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the kitchen, poured a glass, then poured another. And another. Because what else was I supposed to do? Call up my friends and be like, hey guys, turns out my wife's been screwing some dude named Elliot. Wanna grab a beer? I ended up on the couch, phone in hand, staring at her contact name. My thumb hovered over the message field, like I was about to type something. Maybe why? Maybe do you even love me anymore? Maybe just come home. But I didn't type anything. I just sat there, whiskey burning in my throat, realizing that for the first time in years, I had no idea who my wife really was. And worse? I had no idea who I was without her. She came home late. I was still on the couch, an empty glass on the table, my mind running in circles. I heard her keys jingle, the soft creak of the door, then her hesitant footsteps. I didn't turn around. For a minute, she just stood there. Then, quietly, "Are you awake?" I let out a slow breath. Yeah. More silence. Then she walked past me, straight to the bedroom, like nothing had happened. That was it. No fight, no excuses, no apologies. Just this. And maybe that was the worst part, the way she didn't even try to deny it. Like we'd already crossed some invisible line and there was no going back. I stayed on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how the hell we got here. How we went from laughing over burnt pancakes on Sunday mornings to being two strangers occupying the same space. And yet, we kept playing our roles. The next morning, she made coffee. Asked if I wanted some. I said no. We went through the motions, pretending this wasn't happening. Pretending we weren't standing on the wreckage of our marriage, both too afraid to be the first to walk away. I didn't know what was worse, the fact that she was lying to me, or the fact that I was letting her. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't my home anymore. Something in me broke that morning. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my untouched coffee, while she scrolled through her phone like nothing was wrong. Like she hadn't come home from another man's bed just hours ago. I realized then I was done. Not in the way where you throw a plate against the wall and scream. Not in the way where you beg for answers or demand to know why. No, this was different. It was the kind of done that settles deep in your bones. The kind where you know, without a doubt, that nothing you say or do will change anything. She'd already left me. She just hadn't bothered to move out yet. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to wait around for her to decide when she was ready to end it. I was going to do it myself. I picked up my phone and texted a lawyer. Simple. No emotion. Just a step forward. And as soon as I hit send, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. Because for the first time in a long time, I was taking my life back. The thing about making a decision like that? It doesn't feel real at first. You expect some kind of dramatic moment, lightning cracking outside, a weight lifting off your chest. But all I felt was numb. I didn't tell her right away. I wanted to have everything lined up first. I started quietly moving things out, important documents, sentimental stuff, anything I didn't want to leave behind when the inevitable explosion happened. And then, one evening, I said it. She had just gotten home, kicking off her shoes like it was any other night. I was standing in the living room, divorce papers on the coffee table. "We're done," I said. My voice was steady. She blinked at me, confused, like she hadn't spent months treating me like a shadow. "What?" "I'm filing for divorce," I said. "It's over." For a second, I thought I saw something flicker across her face, guilt, maybe. Or regret. But it was gone as fast as it came. She swallowed. "You don't want to talk about this?" I laughed. I actually laughed. "Talk about what? The guy you've been sneaking around with? The fact that you checked out of this marriage a long time ago?" I shook my head. "No, I don't want to talk. I just want out." She opened her mouth, like she had something to say. But in the end, she just nodded. And that was it. No tears. No screaming. Just a quiet, pathetic ending to something that was supposed to last forever. But as she turned away, I realized something. I wasn't sad. I was free. The days that followed were a blur of logistics. Splitting up the finances, deciding who got what, figuring out who was moving out first. It was surreal, like we were dissolving a business partnership, not a marriage. She was eerily calm about it. No begging, no "let's work this out," no dramatic breakdowns. Just quiet acceptance. Which, honestly, hurt more than if she had screamed at me. Because it meant she had been ready for this. Maybe she had been waiting for me to be the one to pull the trigger so she wouldn't have to be the bad guy. Fine. If that's how she wanted it, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I found an apartment downtown, small but nice. Signed the lease and started packing. The last night in our shared place, I sat on the floor with a beer, looking around at the empty walls. This was the home where we had laughed, fought, made up, planned a future. And now, it was just another place I used to live. I thought I'd feel grief. Maybe even second thoughts. But all I felt was done. So I left my keys on the counter, took one last look at the life I was walking away from, and shut the door behind me. I didn't look back. The first week in my new place was strange. Quiet. I remember sitting in my new apartment, on the edge of my bed, staring at the walls like they were the only thing I could rely on. There were boxes everywhere, and I hadn't even bothered to unpack most of them. I didn't care. The silence was loud. I didn't have anyone to talk to about all the things I was feeling. Sure, I had friends, people who cared, but it felt like no one could really understand. They hadn't lived this life with me. They hadn't seen the small, incremental changes that led up to everything falling apart. I spent the first few nights trying to sleep in a bed that didn't feel like mine. I missed the rhythm of her breathing next to me, the way we'd drift off at the same time, tangled together in that quiet, almost sacred way that couples do. But I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed the idea of us. I missed the familiarity. I missed having someone who was supposed to be there. But even that felt hollow, now. Like I was mourning a person who had stopped existing years ago. So, I did what anyone would do. I buried myself in work. I threw myself into projects. I took on extra hours, extra responsibility. Anything to fill the time, because when I had time to think, I could feel the weight of it all. The mess of everything I had to let go. And then, there were the evenings. When I would sit on the couch, flicking through TV shows that I'd never watched before, pretending like I wasn't still thinking about her, about us. But eventually, it faded. After a few weeks, something shifted. I started to get used to the quiet. I started to get used to the idea that I was alone, but not in the hopeless way I'd imagined at first. It was more like rediscovering who I was outside of that relationship. I didn't have to play the role of husband anymore, and I didn't have to keep pretending I was something I wasn't. I found time for things I'd forgotten. I loved long walks, reading books that weren't just for work, cooking random meals just to try something new. There was freedom in those moments, freedom in the small things that used to feel insignificant. But here's the thing no one tells you about healing. It's messy. Some days, I woke up angry. Not just at her, but at myself. How did I not see the signs sooner? How did I let this happen? Other days, I felt sad. I missed the idea of what we had, even if it was mostly a fantasy. And that was the toughest part, to realize that all those years, all those moments I thought were real, weren't. But slowly, those feelings began to lose their sharpness. I stopped thinking about the what-ifs and started focusing on what now. One night, I went to a bar for the first time in months. It felt strange to be out in the world again, like I was a whole person again. And, for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was just living. A couple of months passed, and I was moving on. I had my routine, I had my peace. I wasn't looking over my shoulder at every corner, waiting for something to come crashing down. I was okay. And then, one evening, she called. I wasn't expecting it. To be honest, I hadn't even thought about her much lately. But when I saw her name on my phone, my heart skipped in that way it only does when you're about to face something you've been avoiding. I answered. Hey, she said, her voice soft, almost uncertain. Hey. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. It was like we were both trying to figure out what this was. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke again. I didn't want to leave things the way we did. I don't know what I was thinking. I wasn't sure how to respond. I wanted to scream, to ask her all the things I never got the chance to. But I held it in. I'm not looking for closure, honestly. We're done. I know. I wanted to apologize. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. She paused, as if weighing her words. I was wrong. I took a deep breath. Yeah, you were. But it doesn't matter anymore. We both made choices. We both hurt each other. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost feel her trying to figure out if there was more to say, but I knew there wasn't. We're not the same people anymore, I said, voice steady but final. And that's okay. There was no dramatic moment, no big confrontation. Just two people, acknowledging the past and realizing that it didn't define them anymore. Goodbye, I said. Goodbye, she replied, and that was it. We hung up, and I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anything. Just a quiet understanding that we both had moved on in our own ways. In the months that followed, I started to understand something I hadn't before: sometimes people change, and sometimes they don't. But regardless of whether they change or not, you have to change for your own growth. It's easy to get stuck in the past, to keep wondering where things went wrong. But the truth is, things went wrong the moment I stopped seeing the cracks and convinced myself that everything would be okay. I didn't have control over her actions, but I had control over mine. I just had to find the courage to let go. What I learned from all of this is that closure doesn't come in grand gestures or final apologies. It comes in the quiet moments, the ones where you finally accept that it's over, and you start taking steps toward rebuilding your life. I learned that I didn't need validation from her or anyone else to move forward. The only person I needed to answer to was myself. I also learned that you can't force someone to love you, no matter how hard you try. And, if you're lucky, you learn to love yourself more in the process. This journey wasn't easy, and I still have days where I think about her. But I don't dwell on it anymore. I don't feel like I've lost everything because in some ways, I've gained something more valuable: my own peace. So, if anyone reading this is stuck, wondering how to move on from something that shattered your world, here's my advice: take it one step at a time. Don't let the pain define you. One day, you'll realize that you're stronger for it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be grateful for the lessons you learned along the way. Now, looking back at everything, I can see how much I've changed. It's not a dramatic transformation, but it's a steady one. I'm not the guy I was when this all started: shaky, uncertain, trapped in a cycle of wondering if I was good enough. I'm someone different now, someone who's learned to appreciate the quiet moments, the space I've carved out for myself. I've met new people, made new connections, and I'm open to whatever comes next. But I've also learned not to rush into anything, to just live my life without constantly worrying about what others expect from me. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I've got it all figured out. But I can say that I'm happy, really happy, on my own. It wasn't an easy journey to get here, but it was worth it. And if you're reading this and you're in a place where everything feels broken, where you're wondering how to move forward, just remember, there is life after the wreckage. It might not look like you thought it would, but that doesn't mean it's any less beautiful. Sometimes, the hardest lessons lead you to the best chapters of your life. And for what it's worth, I'm looking forward to the next one.